Hello, everyone. My name is Connor James, and today I'm going to take you through my vulnerability assessment of two hidden systems presentation I did for the Cyber ISA 4220 course. The goal was to track down and evaluate two hidden servers in a network and figure out how to fix any security issues that were found. So let's get into it. First, I will explain what this project was about, and then I'll break down the methods I used to find these hidden systems, the vulnerabilities I found on the Linux server, and why the Windows server was too tricky to locate. After that, we'll go over some recommendations to fix these issues, and then lastly, we'll wrap it all up with some key takeaways. Sounds good? Let's keep moving. So here's the big picture. The main goal of this project was to assess the security of two hidden servers, a Linux server and a Windows server, within the subnet of 192.168.1.0. I was able to locate and scan the Linux server, which had 4 high risk and 6 medium risk vulnerabilities. Stuff like outdated software and open ports made it a bit of a security nightmare. Unfortunately, the hidden Windows server proved harder to find due to some complex configurations and connectivity issues. Even though I couldn't fully assess it, I'll still share my approach and what I think might be going on. Alright, let's talk tools. I used the Greenbone Vulnerability Manager, or GVM, to run detailed scans on the network, and Nmap for network discovery and service specific scans. My process started with a subnet scan to find any live hosts and narrow down possible targets. Then, after that, I ran scans to check for open ports and services, focusing on things like SMB and RDP, since those are typical for Windows servers. For the Linux server, I dug deeper to identify vulnerabilities and confirm what I was dealing with. Honestly, it was a lot of trial and error, especially with the Windows server. Let's dive into the Linux server because honestly, it was a treasure trove of security issues, although not the good kind. First off, the server was running an outdated version of OpenSSH. Specifically, it was an older version vulnerable to CVE 2021 41617. This is a priv escalation vulnerability, which basically means an attacker could exploit it to gain elevated access. Imagine a guest in your house somehow getting the keys to every locked door. That's what this is. But that's not all. The server also had some poorly configured firewall rules, or should I say, no meaningful firewall rules at all. Ports like TCP 22 for SSH and TCP 80 for HTTP were left wide open. It's like leaving your car windows down in a sketchy neighborhood. These open ports make it ridiculously easy for attackers to try brute forcing passwords or exploiting vulnerabilities in exposed services. So, what's the game plan to fix these issues? First, we would start with updating OpenSSH to version 8.8 or newer. This patches the CVE vulnerability and ensures the server has the latest security features. Next, we've got to lock down those open ports. This is where firewall configurations come in handy. Using something like IP tables or UFW, we can restrict SSH access to trusted IP addresses only. It's like putting a bouncer at the door, only the right people get in. Another key step is ditching password based authentication altogether. Passwords are just too easy to brute force. Instead, we should switch to key based authentication, which is way more secure and eliminates the risk of someone guessing their way in. Lastly, for ongoing protection, tools like Fail to Ban can monitor for suspicious login attempts and block attackers in real time. Now let's talk about the hidden Windows server, or as I like to call it, the ghost. I tried everything to locate it. I started with subnet scans to map out live hosts, then moved on to protocol specific scans for SMB and RDP. For those unfamiliar, SMB is typically used for file sharing on Windows systems, and RDP allows for remote desktop connections. But still nothing. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack, except the needle decided to hide itself under a rock. My best guess is that this server was either heavily firewalled or its SMB and RDP services were disabled. Another possibility is that the server was configured to avoid detection by common scanning tools, something like stealth mode, if that's the case, but it made life pretty difficult for anyone trying to assess its security. Even though I couldn't locate the Windows server, I can still suggest some best practices for when it's found. First, annual regular patching is critical. Windows is notorious for vulnerabilities, especially if updates are skipped. So, keeping the OS and applications up to date will block a lot of common attacks right out of the gate. Next up are the firewalls. They need to be configured correctly. SMB and RDP should only be accessible from authorized devices, and if these services aren't needed, disable them entirely. Less is more when it comes to reducing your attack surface. Lastly, once the server is back on the radar, implement active monitoring. Tools like Windows Defender or third party solutions can keep an eye on any suspicious activity and alert admins before things get out of hand. Think of it as keeping your server under constant surveillance. It might seem excessive, but in cybersecurity, it's better to be overly cautious than underprepared. Now, let's take a moment to talk about how vulnerabilities are ranked, because this helps us prioritize what to fix first. The Common Vulnerability Scoring System, or CVSS, rates issues on a scale of 0 to 10. Critical vulnerabilities scoring 9 or above, and the drop everything and fix this now kind of issues. High risks between 7 and 8.9 are serious, but require specific conditions to exploit. Medium risks, scoring 4 to 6.9, are less severe but can still be problematic if left unchecked. What's cool about Greenbone is that it doesn't just rely on your raw CVSS score. It also factors in real world context, like whether there are public exploits available or how easy it is to patch the issue. This helps prioritize vulnerabilities in a way that makes sense for the environment. For example, a high risk issue that's easily fixed might take priority over a critical one that requires downtime to patch. It's a really smart way to handle things. So, bringing it all together, the Linux server was a success in terms of finding the vulnerabilities and proposing fixes. By updating OpenSSH, locking down firewalls, and enforcing key based authentication, we're able to significantly improve its security. The Windows Server, on the other hand, remains a mystery currently. While I couldn't find it this time, I've outlined some steps for securing it once it is located, like patching, firewalls, and even active monitoring. The biggest takeaway from this project is that vulnerability assessments aren't just about finding issues, they're about actively working to fix them and continuously improving your security posture. This is because cybersecurity is a moving project, and staying ahead requires a proactive approach. Thanks for sticking with me through this presentation. Have a wonderful day.